Welcome back to another episode of the Lehigh Valley Prospects Men's Lacrosse Podcast, presented by Smith Sports Media. I'm your host, LJ Smith, and alongside me this episode, I have Adam Matulevicius, a freshman at Temple University playing club lacrosse there. Adam, thank you for spending some time with me this episode.
Thanks for having me.
Let's get started, as we always do in these episodes. Talk about how you found the sport of lacrosse.
So I grew up playing out in the backyard with my neighbor when I was 4 or 5 years old. And then when I was 7-ish, I went and started playing through SPA, did that for years, then ended up playing club in Headstrong Lehigh Valley, then went to Team 11 and played there.
So starting at a young age,
Yeah.
a similar story to your brother, playing in the backyard, what was that like, having someone else kind of teach you? It's not like you have a coach, you're just playing for fun in the backyard. What was that like, just for the love of the game, for the fun of the game at that point?
It's what I look for most of the time when I'm playing now.
Okay.
I'd rather do stuff like that and not as much as structured, go out there and you have to do this and you have to be great at everything you're doing all the time and can't make mistakes.
The fluidness of the lacrosse game in that regard. So you mentioned playing for SPA and going into club lacrosse. Did you notice a difference from going from a youth program to a club program?
Yeah, it's like you're playing kids from not in your area, so you never see them before. And these kids are going out there and they've grown up in way better areas than lacrosse-wise than where I have.
So you're playing club lacrosse. You mentioned 2 different clubs. What kind of made the jump from one to the other?
Headstrong is more local, and I wanted more competitiveness out of it. And I figured I might as well go. Andrew was going to go try out for Team 11, so I was like, I might as well just do it too and see how I compare with these kids. I did relatively well at tryouts, and I found it really fun.
So when did you start playing club? Around what age did you start?
6th grade, so 11 or 12.
And playing consistently up until high school.
Yeah.
When you're in a club situation and then transitioning to high school, did you notice a jump from competitiveness from club to high school then, or was it kind of on par even with that?
Once you go to high school, you're playing against 18-year-old kids that are actual grown men.
Yeah.
So it's a lot different than going up against 14-year-olds like you're used to.
Okay, so that age difference as well from playing as a freshman and sophomore, going up against seniors that are full-grown men on the field.
Exactly.
How do you feel you adjusted going from youth to club?
Well, once the game picks up faster, I have always been able to adjust relatively quickly. Okay. So it was not that big of a deal. I just got beaten up a couple times and then got used to it eventually.
What position do you play that you're kind of seeing on the field?
I'm attack.
Okay, so attack. So you're taking shots on goal. You're going into the defenders that are huge dudes.
Exactly.
So what different things have you done to prepare yourself to grow in that position?
Mostly mentally, I just have to get myself fully ready to get beaten down every time I go out there and just fully embrace that.
So I feel like that's a real thing. You have to mentally get into a mindset where you're going into big-bodied people who are, their pure intention is to hit you.
Exactly.
And stop you from getting shots on goal. So that's a whole different mentality that for me to even think about. You're putting your body on the line to try to get a ball into the back of the net. What strengths have you brought to your high school team? Obviously, you're a freshman in college now, but what strengths do you feel you have brought to your club, your program?
Probably my toughness. Through high school, I was never a big guy, so I was constantly just kind of put on the ground every 3 seconds for the most part, and then I'd pop right back up and just keep going over and over again.
How do you deal with that mental toughness? It's not just mental, it's physical toughness too. So how do you kind of get in a mindset where you're about to go into battle to get a shot on goal?
Mostly, I just kind of got myself to a point where I didn't care.
Okay.
I just said, this is going to happen. I just got to let it happen.
But you still have the mental fortitude and the physical toughness to fire shots on goal. You played at the high school level. Did you have aspirations to play in college? What was that like for you?
Definitely my sophomore year, I was getting playing time. I started, and I was like, I can actually do something with this. My junior year kind of went downhill, so I was like, I don't think I really want to do this anymore. And I found other things I wanted to do without lacrosse. I wanted to major in architecture. So I'm looking for schools that have that. And unfortunately, most of them that have a Division III program doesn't have architecture. So if I want to play lacrosse, I have to go not do this in order to do that. And then the ones that did have architecture and lacrosse weren't schools that I exactly wanted to be at.
Okay, so kind of prioritizing the academic side of things and not seeing lacrosse fit into that forefront for you. That's big to even say that, because a lot of the times I feel kids are like, I'm going to this school for a sport, not necessarily an academic program, but you're the other way around, which is excellent. You land at Temple. What was the process looking at other schools if lacrosse wasn't the main thing you were looking for, finding a program in a school that fit you?
Mostly, I really wanted to be in a city. So most of the D3 programs I could have gone to, they weren't in that area anyway.
Yeah.
So I was looking at mostly schools around Philly and Pittsburgh. And then I was looking at these smaller schools, and I was pretty much exactly like what Parkland is or smaller than that. I'm like, I don't want to do that.
Okay.
So then I found Temple, and I like fell in love with the place. And this is where I can be for the next like 4 or 5 years, however long I'm going to be there for.
That's excellent. So finding the comfortability in Temple's campus, the city, all those things that go into finding a school for academics and athletics, you found that in academics, but you have a very special story with club lacrosse. So talk about when you stepped foot on Temple's campus. Did you know they had a club lacrosse program? How did you kind of find out what club lacrosse was at Temple?
Yeah, so I knew they had a program, but I had no intentions of going into it.
Okay.
I was completely convinced I was done after when I quit my senior year. I was like, I'm not doing this again. I don't want to play anymore. First week, there's not a whole lot going on, and I'm not great at going out of my way to like find people and make all these friends and stuff. So I had pretty much nothing to do that whole week I was there. I was relatively miserable.
Okay.
So I'm walking around. I went to the gym because that was like the only thing I had going for me at that moment. They had all the clubs out that day, and I was like, I'm going to go find like something to do. So I find the club lacrosse team there. They call me over. We have a conversation, pretty much like, just sign up for this. You can show up to tryouts and we'll see how it goes then. I do that. I went to tryouts, did pretty well, had a whole lot of fun doing it, and then that's kind of where it went from there.
Seeing that you just kind of sign up, they do have tryouts. Did you feel stressed over? Were you kind of anxious about going to a tryout, not really knowing what to expect in a club lacrosse tryout like that?
I kind of just went into it. If I make it, then that's great. I have this going for me now. If I don't, then it's whatever. I'll just find something else to do.
So thinking back to when you're in high school, did people push like Division III, Division II, Division I? Did anyone talk about what club lacrosse was at the college level?
Well, mostly every coach I've had was pretty much pushing like, you should want to play NCAA, division, whatever.
Okay.
Like, this is a goal and this is what you want to do. And then on top of that, on social media, they're all pushing MCLA as a kind of complete joke.
Okay.
Like, not real lacrosse, and you don't want to do that ever. So growing up with that, I never thought playing at a club level would be something I'd want to do or like should want to do.
Yeah, so given that kind of feedback, like this isn't exactly what the route should be, but now that you're in that route of club lacrosse, what have you seen with yourself, your teammates? Are your teammates just like you, like thinking about playing lacrosse at the college level, but not really wanting that commitment level? What are your teammates like in that regard?
I'm one of a couple kids that didn't even decide I wanted to do that, but there's other kids on my team that played like the high level D3. One kid was like on an NCAA Division III championship team. A couple of them were there for a few years. Were like, this isn't what I want to do anymore, and left, and then came to Temple and played there.
So having the opportunity that if it doesn't work out in that regard for division whatever of NCAA lacrosse, club lacrosse is an option at the collegiate level, and you've kind of found yourself enjoying that aspect of that, right?
Yeah.
You end up making the team. What was that like? What's the practice schedule? What's kind of the normal week by week scenario for club lacrosse at the college level?
Well, for Temple, we're MCLA Division I.
Okay.
So we practice like 2 days a week, like Tuesdays and Thursdays, and then on Wednesday do like a stretch and lift thing.
Okay.
Over the weekends, we do games against like other programs in the area or across the country.
So you mentioned you're still a Division I program, just in a different type of conference, not sanctioned by the NCAA. You're still facing other big program. So you're traveling like a normal kind of Division I schedule, facing teams like who?
Last weekend we were in Kentucky playing them, and then Alabama came up there. We played them too. And then the next day we traveled up to Miami, Ohio and played them.
So you're facing legitimate Division I like programs that are big in other sports but don't have an NCAA schedule. They're not a part of the NCAA. So you're still facing these big schools. You're getting an experience that's very different from a normal Division II, III kid. You're facing like almost a national schedule. How has that been for you so far? Just being a part of that, the travel, the practices, the gameplay. What is your takeaway from that so far?
Well, it's fun for the most part. I mean, sitting on a bus for like 12 hours to go to Kentucky is as fun as 12-hour bus ride can be.
Okay.
But the kids we're playing against, they're all from all over the place, and they're really competitive, and they all want to go out and compete as hard as they can. And they don't really have anything else to lose because they're not getting any scholarship money or like NIL deals out of it. They're just in it just to play.
Okay. So that's a true concept of you're playing the sport for the love of it, but it's also not, it doesn't seem as strict, as stringent. You only have a couple practices a week. You don't have to eat, sleep, and breathe the sport of lacrosse. Have you found that to be a benefit for you your freshman year?
Well, yeah, because I have like all sorts of projects and stuff I got to work on for school. So that gives me like time to do that, but also play lacrosse when I want to do that as well.
How many teammates do you have that make the trip? Do they only take a certain amount of kids? How many are on like the roster of like a normal club team?
I think our team's around like 50 right now.
Okay.
Maybe like 45. But all of us go there. We all like do everything together as a team.
And the other programs you faced, are they around the same size? Do you feel like they're larger?
That, or they bring even more kids in. Like we played JMU, they had probably like 50, 60 kids.
Wow. Okay.
I think Liberty has a whole bunch too.
Yeah. So just having the capability of, you still have tryouts. So when you went to tryouts, how many other student athletes were there?
I think we had like 80 kids on the email list, and I think only 50 showed up.
Okay.
We didn't make serious cuts this year because everyone was playing relatively well together, and we were like, we're not getting rid of that.
Yeah. So that kind of seeing the size difference from other rosters and what Temple's is, you kind of find that balance of, do you see everyone at practice? Is it like if you don't show up, there's consequences, or is it like, how does that work so far?
I mean, with us, if you have something going on, you have to let either one of the captains or the coaches know you're not going to show up. That doesn't stop kids from just not showing up or being there. Ideally, we want as many kids to be there as possible for every practice. Ran like how a club would be, so we have like board members like secretary, president, vice president, all that stuff.
Okay. And those are kind of, what are those, the designated captains then in that regard?
Like, that's who you'd reach out to if you're not going to be at something or you need something for.
Now, you're at Temple. It's a Division I program. For every other sport, you're a Division I program in your conference, in your governing body. You have access to the same things that those athletes have, whether it's weight room, whether it's the fields, the facilities. What does access look like for you at Temple?
So we get to use the athletes' pavilion facility by our field to warm up before games. We don't get like the exact access they would. We don't get like a code to go into any building we want to. We have like a weight room. It's not the same one they're using, but we get the scheduled time for it.
So there's access, but not the same level.
We don't get main priority over every other program there.
What has been something you've enjoyed the most so far playing club lacrosse?
Probably being around the team. I tore my knee in October, so like I've been sitting out a lot more than I want to.
Okay.
But even then, like I show up to everything just because I actually like being around everybody there, and I actually like being there.
So how have you dealt with an injury?
Second fall ball game this year.
Okay, and that's what had happened. How have you dealt with that mentally, still trying to be a athlete, but getting classwork done and dealing with rehabbing that? Have you been able to rehab it through Temple?
Well, my coach is a registered PT, so I had him go through everything with me, and he was my PT for the most part of it.
Okay.
I flew through like the actual physical therapy part relatively quickly. Now I'm at the point where I have to just go through field stuff and get confidence back in my knee again. But he's texting me about it, making sure I'm all okay and giving me something I can work on with it all the time.
So being able to kind of build that up moving forward and gain playing time. Have you seen the field so far this spring?
Yeah, last weekend I played probably more than either one of us thought I should have. But
so you're finally getting back on the field. You're working towards being back to full speed. Is there a goal that you have set out for this season, or is it kind of just like be there, be present, and play lacrosse?
I mean, if it's up to me, I'd love to get back on the starting lineup again, but I don't know if that's realistic at this point.
Okay.
I'm just happy I get any time at this point.
Yeah.
Because in my head, I was done for the whole year, so.
If anything you get at this point feels like a win, just being able to step out on the field.
I'm just happy I get to show up at practice and play there.
Making that transition from high school to college, not necessarily thinking about playing lacrosse at the collegiate level and focusing on academics, now having this added on, how was that adjustment to your schedule? Did you notice a change, or is this kind of like status quo for you?
I mean, it's just kind of time management. As long as you manage what you're doing right, you're pretty much fine.
And traveling too, being able to get work done. Yeah. Obviously, a 12-hour bus ride's not ideal.
Yeah, I mean, I've worked on stuff on the bus, but it was mostly like finish as much as you can the 3 days before we left and get everything else done on that bus ride then.
As you continue out the rest of this season and hopefully continue to rehab and get better to full 100% moving forward next year, do you see this being something you continue to do?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So buying into what this club culture is at Temple, would this be an avenue you'd recommend to other viewers potentially if they're not exactly sure if playing lacrosse at the collegiate level is something they want to do?
I'd recommend this probably before going looking at collegiate things, unless like you're 100% sure you want to do that.
Okay.
This is probably a better way to go.
And in your opinion, why is that? This is all opinion based. So why do you think that's the better option?
In my head, I was on the fence by like my junior year if I wanted to play in college or not. And if I'm not like 100% sure want to do this, I'm going to be miserable the whole time I'm playing at this level.
Realizing that in high school was something that led you to this decision. So if kids are kind of uncertain about that, but you knew kind of where you wanted to go academically though too. So there were other factors in that. But knowing that lacrosse, you didn't want to be the only thing you're doing at college. So as we get ready to wrap up the episode here, is there any advice you would give to high school athletes looking at the college level? Obviously, you said you would recommend them looking club rather than going full-fledged NCAA lacrosse, but is there any other kind of final thoughts you would have to share with the viewers?
Yeah, just kind of have fun with it. It's not as big of a deal as it seems in that moment. Looking back at it now, like most people don't look at your or high school like accolades as something incredibly special.
Okay.
Look, it's not that big of a deal if you make a mistake or you have a bad game or anything. Just kind of like enjoy it while it's in the moment.
Enjoy the level of competition you're playing at. Don't over stress about it. Just kind of be present in that moment of what the magnitude of the sport you're playing. That's excellent. Adam Matulevicius, a freshman at Temple University, a former Parkland Trojan. Adam, thank you for spending some time on this episode of the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for tuning in to the Lehigh Valley Prospects Men's Lacrosse Podcast presented by Smith Sports Media. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel searching Lehigh Valley Prospects Podcast. You can stream the podcast on Spotify and Apple Podcasts searching Lehigh Valley Prospects Men's Lacrosse Podcast. Follow us on social media on Instagram at LV Prospects MLAX Podcast, on X at LV Prospects MLAX, and on Facebook at Lehigh Valley Prospects Men's Lacrosse Podcast. Until next time, I'm your host, LJ Smith, signing off.